everybody, it's Dana. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and blog. Today I am going to do something a little bit different. We're going to be working with some alcohol inks. Now this is all the rage. I did this last year on one of my periscopes, and now I thought I would bring it over to my YouTube channel. So let's go ahead and get started. I already picked out some of the alcohol inks I'm going to use. I'm also going to use some alcohol and some blending solution. So for my inks today, I'm going to go ahead and shake those up. And these are some Adirondack inks. And I picked out a blue, a pink, a purple, and a mixative, which is silver. So I'm just going to make sure I shake those up good and I don't have any sediment sitting in the bottle, the bottom of the bottle rather, because I have had these for quite some time. All right, now since everything's well shaken, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the paper I'm using today is Yupo paper. It's a plastic paper and it's fantastic for this technique. So to get started, I'm going to put down some of this gorgeous hot pink magenta color. Absolutely one of my favorite colors. And then I'm going to add some purple. And as you can see, the inks are automatically going to start blending and creating a beautiful design for me. Now, when you're doing this, it's really hard to control the alcohol ink on this. It kind of moves any way, which way it wants to, and you can really not replicate each one of these designs. It's like it totally has a mind of its own, and that is what's so beautiful about it. So I'm going to go ahead and add some of that silver mixative in there, which I think is absolutely beautiful. And now some of the alcohol blending solution. Now you can see how that really allows that mixing to spread and really gets all that alcohol moving on that paper. So as I tilt it, you're going to see that mixing it really becomes veiny for me. And that's what I want. I want it to kind of really start running into all of that pretty pink and purple. And I really get that marbleized effect that I'm going for. Now, anytime you do this, adding more alcohol is going to make your project take a little bit longer to dry. Just keep that in mind. Now, I went ahead and I spritzed it with some alcohol just so I can get a few cells. The cells are going to be like white open areas. And that's also going to help my alcohol spread on my paper. So I really like the look of how these alcohol inks move on this paper. So I like to just keep experimenting until I kind of get the look that I'm going for. Now, at any point you could stop. Now I would tell you it's quite addictive. You can keep going and going and going with this. You just need to know when to stop. So now, since I have the color blend that I want, I use a paper towel that has some texture in it to now grab that alcohol and fill out the rest of my paper with it. So I'm just pushing that ink out to fill up all the white spots. Now, I could have left it where I had some of that white area, but I really need this piece to be filled all the way to the edge because I'm going to be doing a technique a little bit later. So I needed to have the paper fully covered. So now I have some beautiful background paper to work for the next part of my card. So now I have everything the way I want it. I'm going to set this aside just to dry for a little bit. Isn't that gorgeous? I love the way these alcohol inks move. Now, since that's dried back a little bit, I'm going to grab a stencil from Simon Says Stamp, and this one is the Medallion Star. And I'm going to grab some Shimmer embossing paste rather. And I want to go ahead and put this right on top of that background. Now, what I love about doing this technique is that I can really build up my layers and build up my design right on top of this beautiful alcohol ink background. So I'm just giving myself a really nice, clean and even layer of this shimmer paste. And this shimmer paste, it has like an iridescence in it. So you're really still going to be able to see some of this color through, but it's also going to give me very pretty highlights of color on this. So I'm just smoothing everything out just so I have a good coverage and it's pretty much even. So it's going to dry even for me. Now the magic happens. I can go ahead and pull back this stencil very carefully, and I'm going to have this gorgeous design. Look, you guys, look how gorgeous that is. So we're able to have a fantastic design on top of all this alcohol ink. And look how beautiful that is. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my palette knife just to clean up a little bit around the edges that I came outside of my stencil. And I really need to set this to dry for a couple hours, but I actually let mine dry overnight. You just want to make sure that this dries thoroughly overnight. If you're doing this technique, you don't want to mess it up at this point. So now to finish off the card, I really need to add a sentiment. So I'm just using a scrap piece of cardstock, and the stamp said this, I believe this is called Together by Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to heat emboss this. So I needed to make sure that I use my embossing buddy so I don't have any of my embossing powder sticking to this card panel or this card piece a little bit later. So Versamark obviously is my go-to ink anytime I'm going to be doing any kind of heat embossing. I'm just going to go ahead and press that down so I get a good crisp image. And now I can go ahead and set my MISTI aside. Now for my white embossing powder, I use Wow embossing powder. This is the ultra fine opaque white. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of that right on top of that sentiment. And the sentiment says, "We're strong." And I think this is going to go perfectly with that beautiful background. Now I'm going to get my embossing, my heat gun really, really hot, because I just want to make sure that this paper doesn't bow too much. Even though I'm going to be cutting it down, I just want to make sure it does not bow too bad when I go ahead and heat this up. And as you can see, my gun was really, really hot because you can see the change in the color of paper. But that's going to dry back and the color is going to come back to that deep purple. All right, so now since that's done, I went down and cut down my panel, and I cut it with a stitched rectangle die. And now we can go ahead and start putting the rest of the card together. I went ahead and trimmed down that sentiment, "We're together," and I popped that up on a piece of foam tape. Now I also stamped out the word "together." When I was cutting it out, this is on vellum, when I was cutting it out, because the wording was a little bit thin, I inadvertently ended up cutting between the G and the E, but that's okay. Because of this design, I'm going to be able to piece those two pieces back together and you'll never notice that it had came apart. I'm using some multi-matte medium to just put that right behind each one of the letters, and that's how I'm going to disguise my adhesive. Now because this design is quite busy and I also have all of that beautiful color, you're really not going to see the adhesive anyway. But just make sure that if you do this, that you kind of just use what you need and you don't go heavy-handed with this. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my tweezers to help me assist on getting down that vellum. And I can go ahead and tap that into place. Now I'm going to actually put a acrylic block just to place that right over the top till that just kind of starts to dry back. I'm really sorry about the glare on that as well. I'm going to go ahead and grab my tweezers again and go ahead and put the rest of the adhesive right in the back of this second piece. Now, like I said, I stamped this and heat embossed it on some really thick vellum, but when I was fussy cutting it out, I ended up cutting a little bit too close between those two letters and it kind of came apart. But like I said, I'm going to be able to put those two pieces right back together, right on the line, and nobody's gonna know. So I'm just going to line that back up together, and then I can gently push both pieces back together, and when it dries, you're never going to be able to tell. Now, since that's all done, I am grabbing a white jelly roll pen, and I'm just going to do some faux stitching right across the top of the sentiment, just to match the stitching that is going around my panel. And that is really going to finish off the card today. I know there's a lot on this card, but I absolutely love the way this card turned out. I cannot wait to continue to play with my alcohol inks. So that is the card for today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this technique and give it a try yourself. Here is the card totally done, and look how beautiful that looks. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Please feel free to give me a thumbs up and share the video. I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.